Hello, this is Jimmy Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. First, we have Texas Superintendent defends suspending black student over locked hairstyle in full-page ad. Being American requires conformity from the messenger.com by FlimsyL5563. And I didn't comment on that one, but, I think that schools should be able to have free association with whoever they want. But with that being said, I think we need to allow for nonconformity. So I personally think, they still they shouldn't have suspended him for going against the grain with his hairstyle. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the Palestinian people have been able to bypass the Israeli government's internet blockade thanks to all the thousands of kind, generous people from all over the world who have paid for prepaid phone plans and sent the eSIM QR codes to the people in Gaza. And that's a tweet from Myrna El Helbalway, and that was shared by International Silver One. I think that's good, because I think, if people want to provide resources for others, I think they should be able to, and I'm glad that the free market is helping the Gazans with their internet. Then we have Biden stands to gain double-digit political support if marijuana is rescheduled. Poll of likely voters shows from marijuanamoment.net by Whittling Dan. And I said, it's the bare minimum, plus a lot of people who support it wouldn't switch over to supporting Biden because of this support for Israel. In short, it's probably not happening. It's just like the carrot on the stick. And, I like what Caldog Curmudgeon replied to me. Are you suggesting that the Dems at the national level have used this as a carrot on stick to keep voters coming back time and time again to vote for them? I think that's yes. It's always like, promise people what they want to hear and then don't deliver on it and say, well, maybe next election we'll give it to you. So that's politics for you. And then we have two major national transgender rights organizations announce merger from Advocate.com by International Silver One. That's a crossroads from the r/LGBT subreddit. And I think, I'm glad that, I think if organizations want to merge, I think they should be able to. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have OpenAI fails to escape first defamation suit from radio host from news.bloomberglaw.com. And that's by International Silver One. And I said, that's crossroads from the Artist Hate subreddit, by the way. And I said, defamation is free speech, as is slander, libel, hate speech, misinformation, etc. So that's why I personally don't think we should be having it as a legal charge, because I don't think that's very libertarian. I think that's kind of authoritarian, I think we need to support free speech, and defamation would fall under that, in my opinion. That's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Bill requires 10 Commandments poster in Utah schools from KSLNewsRadio.com by Clorox. And I didn't comment on that one, but I do think, I don't think anything should be required to be in schools. If the schools want to put it all, I think they should be able to, but I don't think it should be required. That's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have r/Libertarian Uncensored discusses and grades the U.S. Vice President's number 9, Richard Mentor Johnson. And I said, Johnson, Martin Van Buren's VP, was an extremely controversial politician in his day, not for his political beliefs, but rather for his marriage to Julia Chin. Johnson's wife, who died in 1933, before he became VP later in the decade, was seen as black, even though she was only one-eighth black ancestry. The one dropper was really seen as important back then. It's probably also why Chin was a slave. Needless to say, the marriage and Johnson's openness about it wasn't seen positively by many others at the time, and as a result, he had to deal with a contingent election as VP in 1836, and so he couldn't obtain a majority of the electors, even though Van Buren did. Virginia's 23 electors were all faithless and voted for William Smith for VP instead, even though they were pledged to Johnson. Surprisingly, this is the most recent time a candidate for president or vice president has failed to obtain a majority of the electoral vote and gone to contingent election as a result. Regardless, Johnson did prevail in the contingent election over second-place Whig candidate Francis Granger, with most Democrats voting for him and most Whigs voting for Granger. Johnson's term as vice president was relatively remarkable, though he did cast the third most tie-breaking votes as president of the United States, of the president of the Senate, only being behind John C. Calhoun and John Adams at the end of his term. Also, Johnson was apparently the guy who killed the famous Native American chief Tecumseh, or at the very least, he was marketed as such, which he also was known to use to his political advantage. Final grade C, thoughts. And I also added from the Wikipedia page, after Chin's death, Johnson began an intimate relationship with another family slave. When she left him for another man, Johnson had her picked up and sold at auction. Afterward, he began a similar relationship with her sister, also a slave. And I said it sounds like it might have been a fetish thing on his part, just banging the slaves. Then we have, how would a Libertarian president handle this? From Teasturbed, and that's a guy talking about Israel and the formation of it, and looks like an old clip from the 40s. And I said, Teasturbed says, I keep going back to this time in history and imagining different scenarios that could have led to somewhat peaceful results. To me, at least, it's seen various conflicts since the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the British mandate's subsequent handling of the region. No surprise there. And Israel's establishment was the backing of Truman as a key ingredient in the current geopolitical power struggles that instant lives get caught amongst. Here's what more libertarian-leaning president would have done at Truman's time. And I think if I was the president, I would have, not support Israel. We need to support America first. And since 1948, it's pretty much always been Israel first, not America first. And I think that's something that, isn't very libertarian. You guys support your own country first, not some country in the Middle East that, has, is just there to, be kind of like a Jewish ethno state, kind of. That's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Just for Fun post. No direct correlation to libertarianism, although tangential ones do exist. And that's a cross-post from the non-political Twitter subreddit by FlimsyL563, and it's a tweet from R. McIntyre. The most basic civilization is the shopping trolley problem. There is no dire emergency. Do you accept your duty to return the cart even though you gain nothing? And I said, I think the libertarian perspective that you should put it back is, but as long as you don't steal it, I think it's okay. And BHKMB said, replied to me, the libertarian perspective that people should stop bringing their hands over the behavior of others and running to their surrogate parents and government and demanding that people should be punished for that behavior. I think, that's a good perspective as well. I see another guy, let's see, where is it? I'm trying to find, I like what Clorox says. I think L's are taking them home because they're not an explicit signed contract saying you can't. So I think that's interesting as well. I think ultimately, if people can justify if you want to do anything with your shopping cart, I think you should be able to. But just be aware that stealing it isn't considered very libertarian. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have highly unusual body that governs federal court since that Clarence Thomas investigation from rawstory.com by Whittling Dan. And I said, progressive, the U.S. criminal justice system is biased against the blacks. Also progressive, when are they going to get Clarence Thomas? So, it just goes to show you that, if, the progressives love the black community, except when they dissent like Clarence Thomas does, and they're suddenly public enemy number one. So that's my thoughts on that issue. I think they should hold them all accountable. I know that's not probably never going to happen. Then we have lawsuit 4 years and counting with no discipline to cops who broke a man's leg after carefully driving by in a parking lot from MiamiNewTimes.com by Chad Muffin. And yeah, it just goes to show you the cops aren't your friends, and you should probably avoid them whenever possible. That's my thoughts on that issue. Unless you need their help, I guess, but that's probably that times you need their help are probably gonna be few and far between. That's my fault. That's why I think there. Then we have LOL What from Twimpool on Twitter, and that was a quote tweet of his. He's quote tweeting Jack Lombardi too, who tweeted hashtag breaking whoops. Biden forgot to use Illinois notary for ballot signature sheets. Illinois Board of Elections say this is as requirement. Per Illinois election law, candidates must use an Illinois notary. If not, candidate will not appear on ballot. This objection was filed Friday the 12th. Today, Biden's attorney pushed to dismiss the objection, but the Illinois Board of Election followed the law and set a date for oral argument. Oral arguments for the notary case are scheduled for January 29th with no summary judgment issued today. Should Biden be allowed to pass, or should the Illinois Board of Electors remove Biden off the ballot? Retweet this post to stop legacy media from burying the story. And I said, um, way too many rules when it comes to signature gathering, IMO. Just let politicians buy their way onto the ballots. It's a more accurate representation of the system as it is currently. Then we have good discussion on ideas of nationalism versus individualism from All About Trade-Offs. And they link to a YouTube video from John Mearsheimer, The Battle Between Liberalism and Nationalism from the Center for Independent Studies. And yeah, I personally think life should try and be an individual first and foremost. But if you want to form a collective and be proud of by being a proud member of an organization or a nationalist, I think you should be able to. And that's my thought on that issue. Then we have Wittgenstein, Austrian Economics and the Logic of Action from Praxeology.net by Anarcho-Federation. And Anarcho-Federation highlights this part. The basic principles of economics are not empirical, but a priori, such as the contention of a number of theorists in the Austrian school, most notably Ludwig von Mises, who originated the view, and his students Friedrich Hayek and Murray Rothbard, who developed and extended it. On their view, the laws of economics are conceptual truths, and economic truth is grounded in an a priori science they call praxeology, or the logic of action. Essentially, praxeology is the study of those propositions concerning human action that can be grasped and recognized as true simply in virtue of introspection of their constituent concepts. I think that's good. Yeah, I think people should be able to free associate with each other, and if people want to help each other, I think that's very much the basis of Austrian economics. People like to help each other for their own gains, and that's how the system very much works, I would say. The state has no role when it comes to economics. That's more Keynesian economics, and that's not something that I think. And Keynesian economics is not something I think of as libertarian. Then we have Palestinians are using donated eSIM cards to stay in touch with the outside world from NBCNews.com by International Silver One. And I know we talked about that one earlier. But I'm glad that the free market is helping the Palestinians out. That's a good example of Austrian economics in action, I would say. Then we have Republican attorneys general issue warning letter to Target about Pride merchandise from CBSNews.com by Patan Furchan. And yeah, I personally don't think they should be doing that. But ultimately, if they want to help do warning letters, I think they should be able to. I personally think we need to separate big business from big government, and that's what this is what they're doing here. Big business is trying to run big government, trying to run big business, and vice versa. And that's something I think is libertarian. We need to keep those two away from each other because they're both bad. Because big is we shouldn't have centralization, and big business and big government are both that, I would say. Then we have Cuck trailer number 1, 2019 from Movie Clips Indie, Rotten Tomatoes Indie on YouTube, and I posted that, and I said, saw this film when I was looking for the Wikipedia category for alt-right, so I went out and looked at the trailer. It honestly strikes me as a movie a lot of people in the suburb would make. I like the guy in the comments who said, so this is basically Joker if it was made by Reddit, and I linked to the plot from Wikipedia. Ronnie, Eleanor Elizabeth's possessive mother, is deemed unfit for military service due to his history of mental instability and petty crime. Retreating into the world of extremist internet groups, he creates a vlog channel from which he creates what he describes as the downfall of real America. Meanwhile, prompted by sexual frustration, he agrees to play the role of a cuckold in a couple's homemade amateur pornography. He buys an unregistered handgun and begins to spend time firing rangers. He meets his online idol, a charismatic leader of the alt-right. However, when his identity as a cuck emerges, his macho persona is destroyed. Facing online shaming, Ronnie takes solace in his gun, which he regards as the only symbol of masculinity he has left. And I said, these must be the same people who call everyone who disagrees with them at all Nazis or incels unironically. If you're shooting on the Daily Wire for a film like Lady Ballers, just be aware that your side can be cringy too. Circle jerking how bad the other side is can only be so self-relating before it gets to be preachy and annoying, and that's why I think I've kind of like films like this. It's, hey, look at how bad the other side is, unlike us, we are so smart and correct. Then we have a new kind of climate denial taken over on YouTube from TheVerge.com by Clorox. And I said, oh no, people are expressing ideas that go against the official narrative. They really don't like that when you go against the official narrative. Then we have r/Libertarian Censor discusses and grades U.S. Vice President's number 11 by George M. Dallas, and that's a self-post that I made, and I said, James K. Polk's VP, he could have reasonably been president as Polk died only 3.5 months after leaving office as George's presidential retirement. Apparently, his two major objectives as VP were tariff reduction and territorial expansion. I definitely think tariff reduction is libertarian. Tariffs are not libertarian and go against free trade, though I don't think territorial expansion is. The Polk administration did a lot of that. It's a big reason to continue U.S. as its current shape. Apparently, then went to seek the Democratic Party post nomination for the 1848, but his support for tariff reduction wanted to destroy his support base from his home state of Pennsylvania, and Lewis Castenbridge's nomination instead, and cast went on to lose the general election to Zachary Taylor. Final grade C, faults. And I also added, the city of Dallas, Texas might be named for him, but it also might be named for an imaginary guy no one really knows for sure. And there's tons of I linked to the Wikipedia section on that where Dallas might be named for his brother or his father, or in a town naming contest, or a friend of the founder who died in a psych ward, so it might have been an imaginary friend. So no one really knows where that name officially comes from. But yeah, I definitely think it's good to look at other paths like that. Then we have marriage licenses from SMBCcomics.com by Incruente. And it's a comic. It says, well, gun licenses are supposed to protect us from crazy people. Driver's licenses are supposed to protect us from dangerous drivers. So what are marriage licenses supposed to protect us from? And I said, abolish all licenses. You shouldn't need to ask government permission for anything. Then we have Netanyahu defies Biden, insisting there is no space for Palestinian state from TheGuardian.com by Whittling Dan. And I definitely don't think that's libertarian. I think, if people want to make their own state, I think they should be able to. But, ultimately, sometimes that might come down to the force of another state. In this case, Palestine can't because, Israel has the force to make them not to. And I don't think that's libertarian. No, I think just leave everyone have their own country. And, I think the problem with Israel and Palestine is that they're both two giant collectives, and we need to focus more on the individuals than the collectives. And that's something a lot of people get lose when it comes to geopolitics. Then we have Clint Russell announces his candidacy for vice president on the Libertarian ticket. X-Prosperous from the Michael Richtenwald subreddit. And I said, that's a tweet from LP Florida. And I said, would be a great choice, especially for the more populist direction that the party's headed. So I think, he might get it, but we'll have to see. Let's see. And then, let's see if we got anything new. Looks like we don't have anything new. And so I think we're going to wrap up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.